and I work on the curriculum service team. So our team is in charge of more facilitator resources. So has everyone logged on to the Google Plus 3.0 community? No? Yes? Some? Okay, so I would highly suggest if this is your first term teaching it, do log on there, because there's a lot of tips and tricks and application recommendations and sample projects that other facilitators just post. Along with that, there are, like issues that have arisen in class, so, and then we've troubleshooted that for them, so you can kind of read through that and that will help a lot. So we go over that. Actually, Kenny, if you ever put something on there, he's most likely to reply to you, sitting over there.
Hello.
Yeah. And other things such as the segs that's in your hand, the segment guides. So those kind of resources, media cards, supplementary media cards that we would make. So yeah, we're just kind of in charge of all those extra things that would help a facilitator in the class. And then the man over there, Scott, he's a part of FHR, so he does more of faculty human resources, training, and all of that. So you've probably seen him before. So today we're going to just talk about V1. Now, does anyone know what V1 stands for, or V stands for? Vision. Oh, yes. It's a quest for vision, exactly. So the objective of this class, we're going to talk about class structure, the components that you would go through in V1. And V1 is nice because it just kind of repeats the components. So as long as you kind of get it down once, you'll just know that it keeps going. So it's kind of nice, easy to learn. And then we want to talk about social learning, which is an initiative that we're really trying to take here at Cheongdam to go the next step with our education. And the learning cycle, so what they do in the class, what they do outside of the class. And there is one level, V1 Terra, that has a slight difference compared to the other modules, which I have on the TV, and I'll show you later how it's different. So who was it that was doing the Terra? Right. So that you'll have the odd one of the module, and then just some tips. So you might run into certain problems, and I just have some tips for you there. Okay. So like you said, Vision Quest. When we're teaching V1, we want to allow the students to be able to visualize what the characters are going through in the different stories that they will read. So in class, they will read 2 stories. And basically, the purpose of this would be, because students here in Korea, they live in a very kind of homogeneous kind of population, right? So they don't have exposure to different perspectives and experiences as maybe students that are in other countries that are more multicultural. So when students are trying to enter into different international schools or as they're going higher in their education, they need that kind of edge, right? So with Vision, we're hoping when students read the books and they learn about what the characters go through in the different countries and the different points of view, hopefully they'll gain vision that way, different perspectives that way. Okay. Oh, I backed out of that, sorry. Okay, so for class structure. In the first hour, they go through what is called story preview or a review. So since there's 2 books, the first lesson of each book, which would be lesson 1 and lesson 6, they would do the preview. So that just kind of is a teaser to the rest of the book. Whereas the other lessons, so 2 to 5, and then 7 until 12, they would be doing the review of what they did in the previous lesson and then move on with the lesson. Okay. Then the sections for each class, they're divided into 3 acts. So basically the acts are centered around a bigger theme. Okay? And within the theme, there's motifs, so just specific events that happen within those themes. So we start with the first act in the first hour, continue to the second and third acts in the second hour, and then we give them a literary lesson. So we just kind of give them some sort of literary skill and then connect it to the story. Now, this is where sometimes teachers decide that the literary lesson maybe is more appropriate before the acts begin. For example, they might go over characterization. So, character versus character, character versus self, those types of things. That might be more useful in the beginning before we get to the 3 main acts, so that they could use that skill throughout. But you can still leave it here. So that literary lesson, I think, as a teacher, you can kind of gauge which lessons you want to leave it where it is and which lessons you want to bring it before the act. Okay, finally, in the 3rd hour, since it is a story module class, we do a story project. So those of you who taught 2.0, at the end of each class, at the 3rd hour, what did we usually do? CTP, exactly. So instead of just doing the same old CTP, the story projects in the V1 module, they vary. So there are writing projects, there are presentation projects, and interview projects, and summary and movie poster and all these. There is an order to that, so I will explain that in a little bit. Okay. So the 2 acts, like I said, the 3 acts, there's a specific component order. So it looks basically like this. So anytime you are going through one of the sections, you're always going to have the same thing, like these kind of the story arc, an image, comprehension, and then artwork. So I'm going to go more in detail with what these are and why we have them. Okay. So, story preview and review. Like I said, it is more of a teaser, a hook to get them to enjoy the rest of the class. Now, being a story class, they have a book. What would be the biggest, I guess, concern of a teacher teaching this class? Reading, right. Would they read before they come to class? So even though they have to do all the reading at home, what they can do is one of 2 things. So they can just go ahead and look at these trailers, look at the images, and just preview that at home before coming to class if they don't understand the reading. Or they can actually go through each of the sections that we talked about before, right here, and kind of preview the type of questions that will come up to get an idea of what the story is about at least. Now as a teacher, okay, let's say that the student didn't read and they came to class. At least the preview review is going to help them have a discussion of whatever is in this section and then get them interested at least in talking about the theme and the motif. Okay, so again, even if they don't read it, you can still have some sort of discussion in this class. Okay. So we start off with what is called diverge or converge. It varies depending on if it's the first lesson of the book or the remaining lessons. So like I said, lesson 1, lesson 6 would be the first lessons. So lesson 1, this is diverge. That's the first lesson. It's just welcome to the book. What do you think will happen in these images? Whereas lesson 2, it's what happened last time, what's going to happen today. Okay? And there's usually going to be some sort of question beside this page and then a story arc. So you just discuss where you are in the story arc. All right, next we go to a trailer. So the really nice thing about this class is we were able to make these trailers in-house. So we just kind of picked certain ideas and key elements in the story to put in our trailer. So that will guide you to figure out what you want to discuss in the class. Okay? And again, the fear was students might not read. Well, they can figure out what happened last time from watching the video. Okay? So again, first lesson of the book would be a trailer to the book, so a preview, whereas the remaining lessons would be previously what happened. So kind of like when you watch a TV show that goes in a series, and they always, what is that show? 24, and there'd be previously on 24, and they would show you what happens to make you excited about the current. Okay, next, we have understanding. This section will be the section that will kind of maybe trip you up most often, because this will vary depending on the day and the type of book. So some books are not going to be like a novel based. It might be more of a nonfiction So in that case, you wouldn't have like the characters and things, you would do different things here. But you would start off, if it is a novel, so if it is a storybook, the first lesson would go through the characters, just talk about what the characters might be like and what might happen in the story. The second lesson you would go through the author. Then between lessons 3 to 6 and then 9 to 11, again if it's a storybook, it's different plot development. So talking about the setting, talking about the rising action, talking about the climax. So that page, it's always going to be different depending on the lesson. Okay. So this is all just the first little bit of the first hour, just an introduction to get them interested. Do we have any questions on this section? Okay, now for the meat of the class, the acts. So this is where it's, I would say, one of the most important parts of the class is to go through the different acts. So why we want to do this is we want, like I said, the students to be able to envision the different points of view and experiences of the characters. So we want them to make connections between the different key points, the different themes. Okay, so the first part of any one of the 3 acts would be the connect. Okay, so here we would see what they're going to learn for the whole class. As you can see, there's these little black stars, and I'm putting my laser pointer to right here. Anytime there is a point that is highlighted a different color, so it's either going to be this black or it's going to be this orange star. That means those are the major plot points that we have chosen. So meaning if you have a class that is maybe wanting to explore a certain theme more in depth, you can definitely do that. And then maybe you can skip the non-highlighted points. So the non-highlighted would be the minor. However, if you decide, actually no, I think point 6 was more important than point 2 and it was labeled as a minor by us, that's okay. So if you would prefer to explore a different part of the act, that's fine, because every class is different interests, different levels. So because of that, since there are so many different themes and motifs that you're going to explore within the acts, don't feel burdened to go through everything. It's much better to do, something really good in depth and give the students something of quality rather than just trying to squeeze it all in, because then they're just going to walk home and not realize what they did in class. Okay? So, next would be context. So, while we're going through the story, this is not an in-class reading class. So, has anyone taught memory? Okay. In memory, how do we teach reading? Right, exactly. One student would read a paragraph, another student would read a paragraph, another, right? And it just keeps going on and on. That's not what we're doing in this class. Number 1, the readings are much longer. Number 2, that would be incredibly boring. And we would not be fulfilling the objective of this class, which is to figure out the underlying meanings, right? So, in the context section, we start with kind of a static image, meaning there's no characters, there's no movement, it's just setting. The reason we do this is so that the students can imagine kind of the atmosphere of what's happening, and they can literally envision what's happening to the characters. Now, hopefully, the students would have read this at home, and then you would ask the students, okay, what happened in this scene? Who was here? What were they doing? How were they feeling? Why were they doing that? However, if the students perhaps didn't read this section or didn't understand this section, there are these little bubbles that you can hit where key expressions come out. So from those expressions, you can have a discussion as well. So even if they didn't read it, again, connect it back to the theme. Actually, I'm going to go back one step. There's this section right here. So these are all the themes, and these are all the motifs. So every time you hit that next page, it'll highlight what the focus is of that section of the reading. Okay? So when we get to the context, kind of try to connect it back to that motif. Okay. Also, in the context, there's going to be a little fill-in-the-blank text box. Again, just to kind of help them build the understanding of what's happening here. All right. Finally, we go to context 2. So rather than being an image, it's going to be more comprehension based. It is still not a class reading. You're not going to try to, do that. However, you can give the students a few minutes. Okay, guys, go back into your books and try to find out where the answers were to these questions. And the nice part here is that they're going to have a page number right beside each question. And beside that page number, it shows you where on the page the answer is. Is it on the top, the middle, or the bottom of the page? Why would we even do that?
Adding that much would be too much.
Exactly. We just want them to get it and talk. We don't need them to be 100% correct with their ability to answer questions. We want them to think and discuss, okay? And like I said, if you feel like there are certain context 2 comprehension questions that are just irrelevant to your discussion, or you've already gone over it maybe in the setting part in context 1, that's okay. You may kind of skip that one. You don't have to go through every